View from the Gutters, episode 21. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. In this episode, we discuss I Kill Giants, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip ahead to 4215.
What?
Start over.
Let's light the candle. In the words of Cindy Vortex from the Jimmy Neutron movie,
Great.
Let's light this candle.
Yeah, perfect.
You're off the podcast.
Yeah, you're fired.
Oh, fuck you guys. I am this podcast.
All right, welcome to the show. This is View from the Gutters, episode 21.
We're of legal drinking age now.
Yay, we did it. Today we're talking about I Kill Giants.
He's Andrew Chard.
Andrew Chard.
I'm Joe Preti.
I'm Tobiah Panshin.
Cade Reynolds.
Matt McGinnis.
All right.
And before we get started on
yeah.
I Kill Giants, there's something I actually want to bring up from a few episodes ago. I forget exactly when, but we were talking about Hank Pym, and I was defending him as not a wife beater. And completely coincidentally, somebody on Reddit linked to a post that Jim Shooter, who wrote that storyline, or at least some of it, he linked to Jim Shooter's blog, where Jim Shooter makes a blog post, Jim Shooter, about that storyline. And what he says specifically is two things. He says, I'm quoting here, "In that story, there's a scene in which Hank is supposed to have accidentally struck Jan while throwing his hands up in despair and frustration, making a sort of get away from me gesture while not looking at her. Bob Hall turned that into a right cross. There was no time to have it redrawn, which to this day has caused the tragic story of Hank Pym to be known as the wife beater story. By the way, I was too busy to finish that story, so Roger Stern took over 2/3 of the way through. I thought he did a great job. He's an excellent writer who doesn't get enough credit." So it's basically like two different kinds of miscommunication. The writer completely changed the way that panel was supposed to be drawn, and then Jim Shooter left before he could finish the story.
And the thing is Jim Shooter also says in that article that Bill Sienkiewicz came up to him and said, "Why didn't you get me? I totally understand what you were trying to do. I would have been able to do it," which I think was hilarious. But yeah, so he's been acquitted, so stop bitching about it.
But I do think it's like whether the intent of the artist was, or the writer, whatever, like that, it matters. It does matter. But like now that in the universe it is canon that he is a wife beater, like that does still matter. True. And I don't know that we need to crucify a character for like one action, because we've kind of talked about this already, but I do still think that it's relevant to the development of that character. It's like, now he is a wife beater. Like, how do we move on from that?
I think the ultimate Hank Pym is more of a wife beater.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we need to make that distinction.
But I mean, the ultimate version of everyone is an extreme version. I mean, like, it's the Mark Millar version of that character. It's like, I think, taking away from Ultimates, which was the book I think we were talking about when this got brought up,
absolutely.
is in the Ultimates, it was kind of a showing. Well, like, it was kind of an example of like maybe if you got a bunch of superpowered people together, things wouldn't go quite as smoothly as they did in the Avengers movie. It was like, you know what? There's going to be some fucking hurdles to overcome.
Yeah,
and it's not so extreme as Watchmen in the fact that like these are corrupt, horrible people, as much as it is just like
either corrupt, horrible people or ideologues that are just like
naive. It's just like.
I think my main point in bringing this up is that. Fuck you, Mark Millar. Fuck up your stupid ass.
Once again, we come back to this.
You took this one thing and fucking blew it out of all goddamn proportion.
Well, he did that. That was the point, though.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the point of the
I think that was
Ultimates,
what he did, and he did it right. Like Hulk kills like 14,000 people off panel in that book. Like he destroys all of Brooklyn.
Yeah,
like it's an extreme of each of those characters. It's like Hulk is a living weapon in that book and kills a lot of people. And what's the people's reaction going to be like when a monster is now suddenly like your savior? And like
the point that I made about Mark Millar in the past is that he uses a meat cleaver when he should be using a scalpel.
Yeah, and that may
he can't do things that it's sometimes you have to write it a 5 or a 6. Because subtlety is important. And Mark Millar has a really hard time keeping it at 5 or 6. He wants to turn everything up to 11. That doesn't mean everything he writes is useless. And it doesn't mean that I don't like him as a person. I think he's an egotistical ass. I think that he buys his own press. I think he considers himself to be as good a writer as people like Grant Morrison and everyone else, which I don't consider him to be. But And I agree with Toby was saying, too. I think that he's... in fact, I wouldn't say a meat cleaver. I would say a fucking chainsaw when sometimes you need a scalpel.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be highly entertaining.
Yeah, I think that
Sometimes it can be a clusterfuck.
going to the extremes like that is a really amateur writing method.
Yeah.
To just be like, look, I'm gonna take everybody to the extreme. Look how extreme!
Look
Like,
at how
you're just like
extreme I
over
can
the
be.
He's the
top.
guy who gets to the major leagues and swings for the fences on
Every
every
time.
Yeah,
pitch.
no, and
Jose Canseco's who...
yeah.
Anyway.
Sure. Insert baseball player X. 'Cause
Now that I've
we
derailed
know
the
shit about baseball.
podcast in the first 2 seconds,
Yeah.
let's talk about I Kill Giants.
Well,
Okay.
also, I want to say that something else important
No, it's
happened,
dark,
which was
it's dark, okay.
DC and Warner Brothers settled with the Siegel estate, and
That's not important.
I think it is important
Yeah.
because I think fuck DC. That's why the Siegel estate should have just put them through the. They should have done something. Sent them a flaming monkey. Is that a thing?
They would have
No.
wasted a lot of money and they wouldn't have won in the end.
I know.
It's
but-
better for everybody that they settle this matter and get it out of the way.
Indeed. And I'm actually kind of excited about Man of Steel, but I didn't say that.
No, you can say it.
yeah.
I've heard
it's-
very complimentary things from people who've seen early screens.
The
Yeah.
third trailer actually is starting.
Yeah.
You can tell much more what the direction they're going to go in, and it seems like they're going to do something a little bit more along the lines of Birthright, where Superman grows up, and he's like, oh, you're superpowered, can't let people know you're superpowered. Then he realizes that he kind of has to take that spot, which I think would do well, because Zack Snyder's in there. I think you're going to get some flying through buildings and big holes in the ground and shit.
Well, let me put it this way. Iron Man 3, I'm going to go see that on opening day. I'm going to go see that the first showing of opening day.
Yeah.
Superman, I'm going to wait till Sunday. I'm going to see what the first couple days of press is like.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been burned by superhero movies before,
Yeah.
so I'm always like really tentative when it
Well,
comes
specifically
to that stuff.
Superman movies.
Yeah. I don't know. There's so many things about that
What are you
movie.
talking about? The Quest for Peace is the greatest movie that's ever been made.
Is that the one with
Anyways,
Richard Pryor?
No,
that's Superman 3. Superman. The Quest for
Superman
Peace
3 is
Superman
the greatest
4
Superman movie ever.
With Solar Man.
I have the one with Richard Pryor.
Best one ever.
I have the novelization of that.
Oh my god!
I found it for $1 at a gas station. If you guys want to read it,
It's
I
easily
haven't read
worth like twice that.
That's a whole different
Actually,
episode.
no, I'm sorry. I think I found it for $4 for $1. So I think I got it for a quarter.
That's
And it's easily worth 8 times that.
Yeah.
easily worth 8 times the price.
But yeah, I don't know. So that's the one that I know.
So, Joe, what do you think about I Kill Giants?
I love I Kill Giants. I think the comparison that springs to my mind is in one of our earlier episodes we talked about Joe the Barbarian, which is kid in diabetic coma, and he's kind of moving in and out of this fantasy world, and you're never really made clear what's going on, but he's dealing with loss, and it kind of turns into this whole dealing with loss thing. And even though it's beautiful, the art is beautifully done. I don't think we thought that Grant Morrison did a very good job articulating this.
It's a great idea for a story, but it never quite makes it.
Coalesces. It never really kind of comes together. I Kill Giants fucking nails it.
Yeah.
I Kill Giants is everything that story should have been. And at the end, I think we were all in agreement that we were all tearing up, great manly, weepy tears of manliness. It's a powerful story.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really well done. I think it's Joe Kelly who I think is able to kind of walk this line of like pathos and absurdity at the same time. And so he never really mires you in it, but when he hits you with it, you feel it. You've been hit with it. So I think it's a great story.
Toby, what do you think?
I liked it unequivocally. Like, normally I have misgivings or reservations about a story. I fucking love this thing. It made me cry.
Yeah.
It really, I actually teared up towards the end of this. And I wasn't sold on it at first. I found the art a little bit inscrutable. It took me a while to get into it. And I was trying to find the exact point, but I think it's in chapter 3, there's like an offhanded comment when you really think about the implications of it, like completely transforms the story. And that's the moment that really sold me on it. Because when you first start reading it, it's this girl and she's acting really weird and she has all these ideas about giants and magic magic hammers and shit. And you don't quite know what angle to grab the story from. Is she being serious? Is she being weird? Like, do giants actually exist or not? And it's when you hit that moment I think it's the third chapter, and I'm going to look for it while somebody else is talking. And that comment where it suddenly, like very suddenly, frames the story for you, and there's kind of this, I felt almost whiplash, because I was like, oh my God, when I suddenly realized where the story was coming from. And from then on, I was sold, and it's just every single page, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Until I got to the very end and had a little bit of a breakdown.
Yeah.
I 100% recommend this.
Yeah, I think all of Chapter 3 is the book that sold me, too. I think it's the big turning point in the story, because it's so great. It's called The Armor. It starts off, she's just sitting on a bench in a suit of armor, and these little, like, gnome pixies or whatever are flying around her. And she's like, oh, you're hiding. And she's like, I'm not hiding. I'm just, in armor and whatever. And then it evolves into her telling you about the day.
It's when she's talking to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor says, what's going on at home with Karen and Dave, and then it's redacted.
Yeah.
And she just has this, like, shocked look on her face. I think that's really the moment where the story coalesced for me.
Yeah. Well, you find out that there's not giants. Well, you don't find out that there's not giants, but you find out that that's not really what's bothering her.
Right. Well, you realize that she's not, this isn't a fantasy world. She's not hunting giants. She's a very disturbed, distraught little girl who has very serious issues that she's trying to deal with, and she doesn't have the mechanisms to do that. And all of the giant stuff that you've seen heretofore are coping mechanisms that are internal to her.
Yeah. And just, that fear of giants and that fear of, like, what she has to fight against is a fear of an intangible thing. And so to make it into a tangible thing in her mind is the only way she can deal with it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've said for a long time, the best stories, at least for me, are ones where they take an internal conflict and they externalize it. They turn it into an external conflict. And by resolving the external conflict, they resolve the internal conflict. And that's what this story does, very, very deftly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
What did you think, Cade?
I loved it. At the end, I had two impressions when I finished reading the book. One is I broke down and wept very unmanlike.
Strong men also cry. Strong men
Men weep.
Also cry.
We
And my second reaction was that I wanted to strangle Joe for not telling me to read it before.
It's hard for me to keep. I always want to recommend things to people, and it's hard because I own this originally, and I think I lent it to somebody and they left with it, and I haven't seen it since. If it had been on my shelf, believe me, I would have told you to read it.
Yeah, this is not something that I would normally ever pick up on my own, and after having borrowed it and read it, I'm definitely going to pick up a copy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one that in the past few days after finishing reading it, I've recommended it wholeheartedly to people.
Yeah.
It's
such a classic book that just slipped through the cracks, I think, for a lot of people, and it's definitely worth recommending to people.
And this is from what, 2010?
Yeah, it was right. Yeah,
2008.
It was the single issues were coming out pretty soon after I started working at a comic book store. So I got into it during the single issues. But it was recommended to me from another podcast around comics, which is infinitely more popular than we are, so I don't need to give them a shout out. But it was one of their top of the stacks was I Kill Giants, and I read it, and then a friend of mine who was on Ladies Night last episode, Amarantha, who recommended the book, read it around the same time that I did, and I think recommended it to Matt.
Yeah, actually Amarantha was the one that recommended it to me, It again was something that I had seen, but I had passed over a bunch of times, quite frankly, almost purely because of the art. I think the art is good in the story, but it's not my type of art that I really cleave to. It's not really my style. But yeah, I mean, overall, I love the story. I love the story, and it's the kind of thing that it's rare for me in a lot of the comics that I read. I have two kids, one's 2, one's 1 right now, that, that I would recommend for them to read, between, I'd say,
Probably tomorrow or
yeah, like right now, I'm reading to them. But I mean, that I would recommend for them to read when they're on the younger end. I'd say between 12 and 15. A lot of the comics that I have, I probably wouldn't want them to read until they were at least 16, 18, 20, never, maybe. Especially my daughter. Yeah. But this is definitely something that I would have no problem recommending to them when they're at, 10, 11, 12, coming up asking what are good comics to read. So I love that too. I love that not only is it a great story, but it's something that's more all ages than most.
Which really comes down to the origins of comic books was for younger readers.
Yeah.
And I think this does a good job. I'm sorry, go on.
No. You're definitely riffing off what I was trying to say. The other thing too that I really liked about this is I feel like it embodies everything that is great about independent comics. It takes a story that you could never ever see in the Marvel or DC universe. This 5th grade girl that's essentially misunderstood by all her peers and a very internal character, and takes this kind of internal struggle and puts it under a microscope. And it's definitely the kind of story that makes you look at other people you might know very passively and wonder about them and what's going on and what their internal struggles are. And I think it's the kind of book that can bring people together as a society, which I don't mean to get altruistic on anyone, but I love that. I love that kind of, I don't know.
I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think that this is the perfect antidote for anybody who goes, oh, comic books, oh, those are for kids. Like, only knows about, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I think this is the perfect thing to put in their hands and say, and challenge them to read it.
Yeah.
And go, comic books can be meaningful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, it's
and cathartic
so
and
deep.
Beautiful in the same way that I think that you hear literature spoken of in this certain way. It can be moving, or prose and poetry it can be moving and transportive and blah blah blah. But I think this is a perfect example of a graphic work done in the graphic medium that does that. Because I challenge anybody to read this and not be moved by it.
Yeah,
it's incredibly moving, and the art just helps, I think, hammer home, what's moving about it.
Yeah, it's so abstract and so fantastic in the art. I mean, like fantasy fantastic in the art. That it just, a world in which giants and fairies and pixies and monsters and this kind of stuff could actually exist. It's what helps blur the line between what is reality and what isn't, is when she has these moments. Like in book 3, there's a moment where she is about to open her little purse and has basically a panic attack moment, and it's portrayed solely in the art where there's creepy bugs and shit crawling through the hallway and she's panicking, and just it cuts away from what's inside of her feelings. Essentially, it cuts away from that, the emotion of it, back to what everybody else is seeing, and she's just huddled on the ground panicking, literally having a panic attack.
I was literally looking at that page while you were talking.
Yeah, it's so moving. That part of the book, just it gives me chills. It's fantastic, and it's something that it's so hard to convey emotion in books, and this book does a brilliant job doing it.
Yeah,
and especially for J.M. Ken Nimura, it's his first comic work. It was it's a masterpiece. On a first attempt. It's
absolutely
insane. And to go back to Cade's point, sorry to jump around on everybody, but and Matt's point too, with the all ages side of it, Joe Kelly is a fantastic all ages writer. He's one of the Men of Action team, which were the guys that created Ben 10. So they have a huge grasp on how to write a story for all ages books, which I think one of the things that boils down to is just not talking down to anybody. There's some severely deep and intense and dark emotional content here, but I think Matt's right. I think you could easily hand this to a 14 or 15-year-old kid and they're going to understand all of it.
I think even younger than that.
Yeah.
I would hand this to an 8-year-old. I mean, that's the age that she is in the comic.
Yeah,
I think
there's
there
some
was some
language that I think I would worry about for
I think as
a
a person, I'm less concerned with language than
me
other
too.
people are. But I think that this is something that someone that age could identify with and gain a
absolutely.
lot of meaning from.
I would let my 11-year-old read this, no problem.
There's
a second thought.
There's a lot of subtlety there that might be lost on them,
Yeah.
but there's so much that isn't subtle that they would definitely appreciate.
I should probably reiterate that when I was 10, my father gave me
We're just talking about
Barefoot
this.
Gen and Mouse. So maybe I'm not the best person to judge what is and is not age appropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we were just talking about my roommate and me were having a conversation earlier. I just we have the first 7 hardback trades of Invincible, me and my girlfriend, and I just finished reading them, and I kind of marathon them, which looking back was not the best idea because there are some incredibly, especially towards the more recent books, some very, very intense things that happen. And,
Very graphic.
Very, very graphic things. And I was talking to my girlfriend, and I was like, I think my daughter, who will be 12 in August, I think she can read that now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really concerned. Like, I don't think she'll glorify the violence in it. I think she'll take it as it's meant to be
Which is
conveyed, which is horrifying and shocking and
exactly.
awful. And I think she'll get that from it. But I also think that it would be a great introduction to her to how powerful comics can be as a medium. Sure, she's been exposed to, she's read All-Star Superman, and she's read Birthright, and she's read Long Halloween and stuff, so she's familiar with superheroes, but kind of the superhero as an idea. And after reading this, I'm reminded that I really want her to read this to see how you can tell a story that's fantastic in the abstract, fantastic in the real world, and still have it be really great and moving, and at the same time be,
Yeah, and Invincible doesn't diminish violence in the way that a lot of superhero comics
Yeah.
do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the night that we're recording this, the police in Boston have just caught the guy who committed the bombing of the marathon.
Yeah.
And we were talking, Joe and I were talking about that in his apartment before we left, and his daughter said, they should kill that guy. Like, they should never have captured him. And we talked to her about that a little bit, but I think that she's at the age where it's appropriate for her to have more encounters with realistic depictions of violence and the consequences of those things, and the use of power, which is a very... it's a major component in the Invincible story. Yes, these graphic, violent things happen, but Mark, the main character, is incredibly disturbed by them.
Yeah.
And he's constantly questioning, did I go too far? Was it appropriate for me to do this? What is the best way for me to use these powers?
Yeah.
It's very, very easy for me to hurt people.
Yeah, and we talked about this too when we were talking about Invincible on the show, but his reaction to his brothers, to Oliver's violence, who Oliver is not human, so doesn't have the same kind of emotional attachment that Mark has. And when spoilers is in the 30s, so came out
I
6
feel
years
like,
ago.
I mean...
But when his little brother punches a hole through a certain character, Mark's reaction is incredibly human, and he's just like, Oliver, we don't do that. We do not punch holes through people and kill them. That is not okay. At no point does Mark high five him and go
man, run on. I feel like
rank up, prestige. None of that happens.
Even though it's several years before, I think at this point, it's a very Batman Damian moment. I feel like where Batman's like, we don't do this. Period. And Oliver's like, well, why?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. I solved the fucking problem. What's your problem?
Yeah.
And Invincible's like, because it's hard for him to answer at first.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that answer, and he has to think about it.
Yeah.
But eventually he does, and it's this really great moment.
It's a great journey for both characters.
It really is.
Too.
And that's kind of why I want her to read it, I think.
Yeah.
Part of the appeal of Mark as a character is that he doesn't always have the answer to begin with.
Yeah.
He's not Superman. He just can't just go blah, 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 this is why we do this.
Yeah.
He has to work to come to the answer that fits his moral understanding.
Yeah.
He's like, this is bad. I don't know why. Let me think about this for a minute. Maybe it's not bad.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I made a horrible mistake.
Yeah.
It really is bad,
exactly.
and here's why I now understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've made a huge mistake, Michael.
Huge mistake.
The thing I want to talk about Invincible and touch on this really briefly, it's something I want to talk about on the show or in some other fashion a lot more, but my favorite superheroes are the young adult teen superheroes, like Invincible, like Batgirl, the Brian Q. Miller Batgirl, like Supergirl, where it's especially
Robin.
in the DC universe, where it's these teenage characters do not have to be heroes.
Yeah.
In a world where there's already a Superman and a Green Lantern and a Batman, like, why would you choose to be a hero?
Right,
And
right.
that is a big deal. Like, that means something to those characters.
Yeah.
Like, that defines those characters in a way that, like, adult heroes in the DC universe aren't always defined by.
I was just watching Brave and the Bold this morning because it just went up on Netflix, and I had only seen a few episodes, but I've heard really great things about it, and it really is like I was sold within the first 3. I think in the 3rd episode, Aquaman is there, and I was like, this is excellent. I'm going to watch all of this. But one of the reoccurring characters is Jaime Reyes, as the new Blue Beetle. Somebody who got totally fucked over in the reboot. I think like the new Blue Beetle title is just. I was saying earlier, it's so full of angst that it makes me want to dye my hair black again and like cut myself while I'm listening to The Cure in all black.
But his arc in Young Justice, the cartoon that just ended in season 2, is really good.
Well, and I feel like his original arc, I read a little bit of, and it was good. I think it really kind of got into that. But there's this episode where he's talking to Batman, and he's like, "Why was I chosen? Like, is it just random, or?" And like the whole episode is about it, and at the end, that's like Ted Kord is in it for a little bit, which I think they deserve mad props for because Ted Kord is the shit.
Yeah.
But and at the end, it's like it's not that you got the power; it's what you chose to do with it. That's what makes you a hero, and that's why you were chosen.
Yeah.
And I think you can see that in teen superheroes a lot more keenly than you can with adults. Nobody's questioning why Batman does what he does.
Exactly.
But when you look at Robin, or when you look at Batgirl, the Stephanie Brown Batgirl, or when you look at those characters, you have to be like, you could die. You're putting yourself in danger.
Yeah.
You're putting what is your motivation?
And arguably, the world doesn't really need you. It's
no,
not
absolutely.
Like Superman.
You're redundant.
Yeah, you're kind
You're
of,
redundant.
especially in the DC universe. Not so much in Marvel with Peter Parker, who's a completely different kind of teenage hero that I also love. But like, it's a different thing in the Marvel universe. When in the DC universe or in the Invincible universe, where there are hundreds of superheroes, superpowered beings, like. It means something when they put the cape and cowl on, or when they put the mask on. Like, it's something different, and I think it's something I've always been really drawn to. And I think it's what makes great young adult comics or, kids comics is essentially like, look, these are people who are your age, and they're dealing with something that you're never going to deal with, but you're going to be able to identify them.
Right.
And I think that's another great thing about I Kill Giants, is it's like, look, if you're a kid and you're reading this, it's like, you may never have to deal with the death of your own mother.
Right.
But you understand what that means.
Well, then you also understand what it's like to be a kid and have adults constantly telling you what you do, what to do, and how they don't believe you, and how you need to just listen to them, and they're not listening to you.
And the struggles that you deal with that adults are blind to or don't have any solution. Like, don't fight back against the bully who's kicking the shit out of you and taking your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
There's also a really great arc in this series that we haven't touched on at all yet, which is essentially this kid makes her first real friend. And that's an experience that, I mean, happened to all of us at some point in our life, whether we remember it or not. But, like, you make a friend with a person you care about, and when you fuck up and accidentally punch them in the face or whatever, being able to fix a problem with a friend you really care about is a big deal. And it's a cool thing to watch.
Deal.
There's a lot of really important things that happen in this series.
It's brilliant. I really think
it nails, and this is what I love. I was talking to, my girlfriend is going through and reading Deadpool, and the classic run, and
the Joe Kelly run?
Yeah. And our friends got her, like, the Merc with the Mouth trade, which is, I can't remember who does it. And it's funny and it's good, but she's like, I really like it. And I was like, that Deadpool classic run, that Joe Kelly run, it's so good because Joe Kelly does this really great job of making Deadpool this really, like, wacky, out there character, almost like Bugs Bunny, right? Where he knows he's breaking the fourth wall, he knows who he is, he knows that you're reading him. And every once in a while, there's a scene or an arc where all of a sudden Deadpool just has all this fucking, like, pathos. He has all this, like, emotion tied up into what he is. And you realize the shit that he has been through. And you're like, fuck, it's no wonder he's insane. Look at what he's lived through. Like, look at what he's had to deal with. And he does it without being heavy-handed or, like, contrived or, like, typical, like, oh, melodrama. Like, he just fits right in there. And then he just keeps going. And I think... That really shines for me in this, the way that he's able to infuse all this feeling into this character, but never does it become like overly sentimental
it's not
or melodramatic or like sticky. Like, I hate fucking blankets. And I hate blankets because I think it is not a real memory. It's him being saccharine sweet about this first love he had.
Yeah.
And it just makes me sick to read it because
It
I don't
does.
believe a fucking word of it.
It rings really false sometimes.
Yeah, it really
because
does.
It just feels heavy-handed.
Yeah, it really,
he's just
really
not
does.
as good of a writer as he should be
Yeah.
to be tackling that story.
Whereas if you compare it with something like this or Mouse, where there is no sentiment there, it's just a recording of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels much more real, and because of that, it hits you in the fucking stomach at points.
Well, it never pulls out a giant pair of binoculars and it's like, look at this.
Yeah.
It just goes by really quickly. The
Yeah.
pace in this book is really fast, which is aided by the art, which we haven't talked about a lot. But the art's very manga style,
It
and
is,
at first
yeah.
it's pretty off-putting. But what I think that it does that's fantastic, and I love the art in this, is because it's manga style, because there's not a ton of detail in the backgrounds or colors or things to distract you from what's going on, you read it at a really quick pace,
Yeah.
which helps the story immensely.
Actually, what's really funny about that, like I said, I had a hard time getting into it at first, and it took me a few issues. And as we were standing in the kitchen getting ready to record this, I opened it up and was flipping through the first couple of issues to show people, like, oh, I had a really hard time parsing this. And as I was looking at it again, having gone through the whole thing, I was like, wait, this is perfectly clear to me now.
Yeah.
Like, my sense of it had just completely shifted that the things that were off-putting to me at the beginning, I was perfectly fine with by the end in retrospect.
Right.
Yeah, the comic changes you as much as it changes.
Well, it imposes itself on you as much as you impose.
You have to adjust yourself to its frame of reference.
Yeah.
Right. But I think good works do that.
Yeah.
I think there's always going to be a little bit of challenge in reading something that's like truly a good work or a great work, and that's what makes it a great work is it's able to kind of reach in there behind your in your head and be like, flip that switch, and then you're like, oh, I see now. I understand. Like I'm able to kind of.
It's definitely the kind of story that doesn't come to you; it makes you come to it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the kind of thing that sticks with you much longer because you have to put out the effort.
I definitely think that's a strength of the book. For
Absolutely,
sure.
I
Not
think
a
that
weakness.
my favorite works. I think my hands down favorite works are works of that kind.
I mean, I think we talked about this with Marvels a lot. We touched on this a lot, but yeah, it's that kind of writing. I mean, like you were saying, he does everything with such finesse. And he never overdoes it, but also he never underdoes it. I mean, he's able to put those nuggets there that if you want to pick them up, you can. I mean, I just overall, like I said in the beginning, I mean, it really feels like everything he set out to accomplish in this book, he did.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times we say, oh, if there was 6 more issues, or oh, you could have cut it off at 4 issues instead of 6, or that. I think it was a perfect length.
Yeah.
I think it did everything that it needed to do, and it's rare that happens. And that is wholeheartedly what sold me on this. I'll stick with what I said before. I'm not a fan of the art. I think the art serves the story, and that's great. But that being said, even not liking the art, I still had no problem paying $40 for the Titan edition, which is
I'm
beautiful.
Going to get.
It's great for what it is.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that I could take this and Joe the Barbarian and just smash them together.
Yeah, the art of Joe the Barbarian
totally.
and the writing of this. Although I don't know, I don't think this book would work with.
I
any
don't
different artist.
think so either. I think it would definitely I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it in principle, but I
mean, I wouldn't want to change this.
yeah.
I wish that Joe the Barbarian had better writing.
Yeah.
I wish that not that this had better art, but maybe a different style.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's really just it's not within the
Yeah.
realm of what I normally read.
And for us, as old men comic book readers, I mean, we're not really really the old men of comic book fans, but we have been reading Western comics for a really long time.
Yeah.
But for a lot of 14, 15, high school aged kids, that read mostly manga, this is going to hit them right where they live. This is
absolutely.
such in their wheelhouse of reading of art that it's going to be, they're going to have no problem getting into it.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I read a lot of manga, so this feels very heavily manga influenced, and I'm able to fall right into it. And the fluidity of the panels when, at the end, when she's fighting the Titan during the storm, and just the hammer and the light and the use of light and dark is masterful. I think there's some panels in this book that are just absolutely jaw-dropping in a way, emotionally jaw-dropping as well as artistically jaw-dropping. The first time that she's running past her mom's room and like looks in and it's not a bed with her mom in it, it's like a woman like tied up to a bed and is like a monster of a corpse like tied to a bed is terrifying in a way that the art there's just Toby's holding up a panel of the Titan that is just absolutely fucking gorgeous. I love the art in this book. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think it so fits the work. Yeah. It's so perfect.
And I think for me it's just, it's not even that it's my favorite style. Like, that's where I can see where you're coming from. But for me, it fits so well. Yeah. If you made it, I feel that, like, but making it prettier would somehow change it. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't have to work as hard.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to work hard with this. I want to go back and read it and see, like, the subtleties. But I also totally understand what you're saying. That
like reading Shakespeare. Yeah. Like, you have to work to understand it. You have to get a hold of the style in which it's written and the language that's being used.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's challenging.
It's a messy book, and like having some messy art every once in a while.
Because it's a messy fucking story. It's about life, which is messy. And that's what I love about it, is it doesn't... I think there's a moment for me where I'm like, is this going to have a happy ending?
Yeah.
And you start to realize...
Maybe not.
I mean, you maybe get the best ending that you could possibly get, but no.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that moment, and you're too invested at that point. You can't just stop.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen, but you have to continue to read it. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult. Like, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it right now, because you hit that point and you're like, I don't want to do it, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
But at that point, I almost felt, you feel like you're there.
Yeah.
Like, you're taking that journey with them. And so it would be, like, untrue to not complete it.
It would be wrong of you. I
like,
definitely will say that the first time I read it, I hit that point where, like, I knew what was going to happen, and, like, you don't want to... But, like, you feel... you've invested so much of yourself, as cheesy as it sounds to say it, you've invested so much of yourself into this character and this story that you just can't not.
Yeah.
And it feels wrong of you.
When I read it, I only intended to read, like, the first 2 or 3 issues. I was on my lunch break at work, and I took an extra 10 minutes on my lunch break just so I could read the entire thing in one sitting, because I couldn't stop reading it.
Yeah.
It is that good.
Yeah, it's really intense. I was kind of putting off reading it today because I was like, man, it's going to make me so sad, and I've read this before, and it's hurtful, and I was waiting for the bus, and I just started tearing through it at the same pace that I always do, which is just like, yeah, great story, and then it just starts punching you in the guts, and you're like, stop, I don't want you to do this anymore, and you can't stop turning the pages and looking at more horrible shit, and you're like, oh, it's so great. And I want to touch a little bit on, like, that there is not just... It's not all dark, and it's not all gut-wrenching.
No, it's not.
It's the contrast of the two that really makes the book work, because the sweetest panel in the whole book comes right on the back of, like, one of the, like, most oppressive panels in the whole book for me, is she finds a note on her backpack when she's in with the principal, and it says, "Are we still friends?" And it says, "Love, Sophia," the friend that she made, and it's like, yes, no. And the smile on her face is just like, it's sweet, and there's a little music note coming out of her head, and you're just like, yeah. And then the next panel, she's like, cool, but there's all these monsters coming out that she doesn't see, and then she goes to put it in her bag, and then has a panic attack, and, like, freaks out because she's going to open her bag, and the contrast of, like, really sweet and really awful, and, like, great things and horrible things.
You love her victories because they're so hard won.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because she's great. Like, you're
I mean,
there's
she's
not
awful.
She's awful, but there's still not, for
her.
me, there's not a moment in this book when I'm not rooting for her.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Like, I am fucking, like, I want to be there being like, fuck them, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
You know, even though you know that some of it is, like, really destructive to her, you're like, you want to be like, go out there and fight that fucking thing.
When she's, sassing the principal and calling the gym teacher a bulldyke and punching her counselor in the face, like, all this horrible shit, you're like, yeah, do it.
Do it! Don't give them a
grown-ups are jerks.
Yeah.
YOLO!
I'm sorry. It's great. Like,
you should be. You're a bad person and you should feel
I mean, literally, you do, there's There's no second ride on the life roller coaster.
There's no cause to ever use that word.
Yeah, well, there's lots of cause to use that word.
It's
Like,
true. Just because
Joe.
it's been co-opted by a bunch of douchebags doesn't
Joe,
mean...
always wear your seatbelt. YOLO.
Right?
Yeah.
Never smoke when pumping gas. YOLO.
Yeah, use birth control. YOLO.
I'm shaking my head in disappointment.
But
Well, we had to get him to do it somehow because he loved the book. So it's like, it's
Somehow
not a
we had to make
podcast
Toby
unless
disappointed.
Toby...
Okay, well now I fucking hate you.
Yes!
good enough.
Yes!
We'll take it. Sorry, I rambled a lot on that
Yeah.
one.
No, it's cool.
Have we picked all the meat off this bone?
I think we have. I think that read this. Do yourself a favor and read it. And if
Yeah.
you have a young one, let them read it.
Yeah, I just think it's great to give to non-comic fans. It's great to give to fans of great literature, a great film, and it's good. It's a good gateway drug to comic books.
It is.
Definitely.
It is.
I was going to say earlier, you hear people say literary works, literary comic books, and at least most of the ones that I can really think of are definitely adult in nature.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you can't be an adult and read this, because that's not true. But this is great, because I would definitely call this a graphic novel, literary comic book.
Yeah.
But it is something that is great for younger readers.
It is. Absolutely.
And the cover
is.
on the Titan edition is really cool.
That whole Titan edition is fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
It is. It is amazing.
And that was $40 for a fucking giant hardcover.
I think it's 31 on Amazon.
It's
my
$39.99.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good deal.
Yeah,
it's like
it is.
$10
It's
off on
oversized.
Amazon.
It's got.
I'm gonna go home and buy it. I just can't deal with it anymore.
It's good weight paper. It's not glossy, so it
Yeah,
still
which I
makes
like.
the art look really nice.
Yeah.
All the back matter's there.
Yeah, it's got sketch, but
Is it glossy paper actually? It's a little bit glossy.
yeah, kind of semi-glossy.
Yeah.
I will say this. You're gonna want to call your mom after you read this.
Yeah, I
did.
Yeah.
I didn't, but
I
it
didn't
hits
either.
you. It hits you where you live for sure.
No, I definitely. I think the first time I read it, I called her. I don't know if I did it this time because she's.
She knows that I love her.
Yeah, but
it's man, this book is.
don't read this alone. Don't read this after you've had a bad day because it'll definitely.
It is a sad motherfucking book.
But
Don't read it after your mom dies of cancer.
Don't read it after your mom dies of cancer, but it's powerful.
Well, maybe
Maybe,
do.
maybe give it like 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next on View from the Gutters, Shooters. 'Cause that's going to make us all feel better.
Yeah.
That's a really lighthearted book about
Yeah.
the wackiness of... It's not.
Yeah.
It's very heartfelt work.
Yeah. Let's recommend some books.
Let's recommend
Let's
some
do
books.
that.
Joe, what are you bringing this week?
I brought a favorite of mine, Alex Robinson's Box Office Poison, which is, I'm not going to lie, it's close to 600 pages. But it reads really fast. I mean, we'd have no problem getting through this. And it's basically like slice of life. This group of friends in, I think it's in Brooklyn, and just kind of follows them around. It's really great. I love the art. It's just cartoony enough. It's black and white.
He's definitely a cartoonist.
Yeah, no,
is what I would
absolutely.
say.
He
He's
absolutely
a fantastic
is.
cartoonist.
Yeah, and this is a great. I just really enjoy the hell out of it. I feel like it avoids a lot of the things that like Stray Bullets and Optic Nerve and Klaus writes, where it's really kind of super awkward and painful to read, and you're kind of cringing inside as you read it, or it's awful and depressing and everybody's dying and being shot. I don't think it falls into any one of those. I feel like it's very honest emotionally.
Yeah. I would definitely call it an unabashed romance comic.
It's
romance in the realest sense of the term. There's several love stories in this book that are painfully real, but not awkwardly real.
And not saccharine.
And not in the way that, like, the author is like, hey, look at how shitty my life was, feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get the impression that he lived this life.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, like, the life of people that he knew, or a story that hits close to his heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think there's, as much as it's about, the reason I love it is because as much as it's about relationships, it's also about a love of comic books, because one of the main characters is a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And he ends up working for a guy.
Two of the main characters.
Two of the main characters. One is getting published, and the other one goes to work for this guy, this older guy that worked in the Silver Age of comics. It's really good, and I think that becomes a central theme too. It's kind of weird because the main characters kind of switch halfway through, but it's done in this really, really cool way. And so I think that while it definitely explores kind of the foibles and pitfalls of relationships, it also hits on what's good about them, and also what we love about comic books and about people getting fucked over by the mainstream industry and stuff. So I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a great read. I read it last year for a class that I was taking and kind of fell in love with it. And so I just recently bought it, actually.
Yeah, I read it a couple of years ago. I really like it. There's also a little mini addendum to it called More Box Office Poison, More Bop, which is really good. And I kind of highly recommend everything that
I definitely do.
Too Cool to Be Forgotten is
Too
great.
Cool to Be Forgotten, and there's another one that I can never
remember all of his stuff. Look him up. He's on Wikipedia.
He's great.
His whole library is good.
Yeah. Too Cool to Be Forgotten is probably...
That one's a short one, too, if you want a quick intro to him.
Another dealing with, like, issues with parents and stuff. So.
Yeah, it's a high school story in a weird way.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. But yeah, that's my pitch. Box Office Poison. Alex Robinson. Read it!
All right. Tell me what you got.
I've got one that I've actually been meaning to recommend for a while, and I held off because I expected Brant to recommend it while he was on the podcast. Fortunately, he's not able to join us right now, so I'm going to recommend it anyway. And it's a real upper in contrast from what we just read. I'm being completely sarcastic. It's Lock and Key by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez.
This was just recommended last week on Ladies' Night, which you haven't listened to yet because I haven't shipped it to you. But pitch it again.
Okay, well, if you haven't listened to Ladies' Night yet, like I haven't, Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King, so this might give you some idea of where this is going to go. It's about a family, mother, father, and their 3 kids. In the first issue, the mother gets raped, the father gets murdered, and they relocate to the family's kind of ancestral home in Lovecraft, Massachusetts, to a place called the Key House. The thing about the Key House is that there are all these magic keys that all do different things that the kids start to discover. So like one, you insert it into the back of somebody's head and you can open up their head and pull out their memories and put other things in there. Or there's one where you put it in a door, you walk through and you become a ghost. And also within the Key House, there's a thing. It's not quite a monster or a demon or a ghost.
Like an entity.
Yeah,
but it's this malevolent entity that has been locked in this well for 20, 30 years. And it's trying to get them to let it out in the first series. And it kind of they have these adventures and kind of proceed from there. And it's kind of fantastic and magical, but it is also a horror story.
Yeah.
If you've ever read anything by Stephen King, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm recommending it now in particular is there's only 2 issues left in the 7th volume, and that's going to end the series.
Is the 6th one the last one or the 7th? I can't remember.
I think there's 7 volumes, or maybe there's 6 volumes.
I think there's 6.
6 volumes.
There's
and there's
5
7 issues.
There's 5 out right now, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then the 6th volume is almost done, and that's going to cap the series. So if you've been waiting to read it, now's a really good time, because by the time you finish reading to where it is now, the last volume should be out.
Yeah.
And normally I don't like dark things. I don't like horror very much, but I really, really like this.
Yeah.
It's incredibly well written. The characters are very human. There's a lot of pain and suffering, but there's also a lot of good stuff.
And it is scary as fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Like it's a very edge of your seat at times. I mean, it's one of the few comics that I've read that it did freak me out.
Yeah. The art is also fantastic. I think.
The art is incredible.
It's worth
The art is nice.
And there's actually a really cool... there's a commentary by Joe Hill in the end of one of the issues where he's talking about Gabriel Rodriguez and how he has the whole house mapped out.
Yeah.
So Hill will give him scripts where there's rooms that could not possibly be, and Rodriguez will basically like retool it and put things where they should be because he has the whole fucking thing mapped out. And this is a big goddamn house.
Yeah.
With like land attached to it and all this crazy stuff. It's really...
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
It's incredibly well done.
Yeah.
The art is gorgeous.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention... I was trying not to talk at all on the Ladies' Night episode. I added a couple things when they were, fishing for names and whatnot. But Kaylee, who's great, pitched this book in a way that I would never pitch this book, and it was like, there's magic keys, and it's fantastic, and it was like really cool, and I wanted to just like lean into the microphone and be like, and it's the darkest fucking book ever, but I didn't want to step on anybody's toes, so I'm glad it's being repitched again from another mindset.
I wouldn't quite call it the darkest book ever, but it does start out with fucking rape and murder.
It's pretty fucking violent.
The part that I left out, the guy who commits those actions is the friend of the eldest son.
Yeah.
Who basically, the guy is saying, like, I'm going to fucking kill my dad. And the son goes, well, if you ever decide to do your dad, why don't you do mine too?
Yeah.
Like in this offhanded way, because he's pissed off at his dad. And then, like, a couple months later, this guy comes and fucking murders his dad. And his mom gets raped, and it's fucking awful.
Yeah.
That guy goes to prison. Well, the entity fucking lets him out.
Yeah.
And he's fucking skulking around doing fucking awful, awful shit.
There's some real fucked up stuff in this book.
And this is just like the first couple of issues.
That's actually why I could not. I read like the first 2 series or arcs, and I just couldn't. It's a little too much for me. I couldn't get into it.
It's weird. Normally, like any kind of horror, gore, things like that is very off-putting to me. And there's just enough other good stuff, fantastical elements, adventure going on in this series to keep me reading, despite the fact that it freaks me the fuck out.
Well, it's definitely a good marriage of different genres. Also, it has been a while since I've read it, but if I remember correctly, one of the things that really struck me is even though there are these horrible things going on, it, to me at least, never felt gratuitous. It felt like everything that was happening was to get you emotionally invested and show you why these people are doing the things they do and why they feel so horrible and what drives them. All these different characters and kind of what makes certain characters pull away at certain times and things like that. But as what Joe's saying, I mean, we said this before. We said this about White Last Man, that if you have triggers, it's definitely a book that can
that will trigger you.
And there are some like this first event that kind of kicks things off is incredibly damaging to all of these characters, and something that's dealt with throughout the series is them learning to overcome that pain and heal from that and move on.
Yeah, I think that the art does a lot to help lighten the mood in some of this book too. But what really draws me to it is it's told from the point of view of the kids dealing with the tragedy too, and that helps soften a lot of it. Is actually, like Kaylee talks about her favorite character is Bodhi, and I think is the youngest kid, and I think that telling it a lot of the story through his eyes and through the middle daughter's eyes like helps lighten a lot of the load in the story.
There's actually a specific novel that this reminded me of a little bit that I don't expect anybody else to fucking remember, called Half Magic by Edward Eager. It's about this group of 4 kids who find a coin that grants wishes, but it only grants half wishes. So like if you wish to be like a mile away, it would put you a half mile away.
That's interesting.
And like the way that they get around that and the fallout from that is really interesting, and it reminded me of this story in a weird way.
Yeah, I like that anytime magic is not exactly what you think it's going to be, it's that whole genie kind of deal where it's like, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, like the things that they do with the keys are really interesting. Yeah. Like at one point, one of the characters puts an encyclopedia in his own head in order to ace this history exam or write a book report or something like that.
Yeah.
And the teacher flunks him. Because she's like, why did you just copy it out of the dictionary? Like, this is obviously not your own words. Because he doesn't gain the knowledge. He just has the information in his head, and he can copy it out mechanically. Right. But he doesn't know it.
Yeah, it's kind of, I like the don't fuck with magic kind of elements of it. The middle daughter removes fear from her head with some
and sadness.
Yeah, with some devastating consequences. So it's really good. I think it's a great story. It's a great recommendation. I really enjoy it.
What'd you bring, Cade?
Sorry, I'm trying not to cry. I brought Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. It's one we've talked about on the podcast many times. An Elseworlds DC universe. I think there's Earth 2 involved. I'm trying to remember, but it is basically about the end of the world and...
Yeah, it's not exactly Earth 2 Superman, but Earth 2 Superman is old, and this is a older Superman. It's like a Superman of a retired Superman, essentially. So it does draw a lot of parallels to Earth 2, for sure.
Excuse me.
But Earth 2 was not in continuity this time.
It's the retired village.
Yeah.
It's JLA retirees. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's great.
But it did remind me a lot of the Crisis stuff the first time I read it. But yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, it's about the end of the world and superheroes trying to stop it, and very kind of a lot like what I've talked about before on the Sentry. You know, you've got a lot of good versus evil going on, painted by Alex Ross, which is amazing, always amazing in my opinion. But yeah, that's my recommendation.
There's a lot of very explicit parallels with, or not parallels, but it's Judgment Day.
Yeah.
And it's very explicit, like the coming, like there's a golden calf.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the Spectre, who is the wrath of
Wrath of God takes
is essentially like ushering in this age of judgment to
with
humanity.
the main character. I love the character design. I mean, I think where Alex Ross, I can take or leave his art sometimes. I think sometimes it's great, and other times it's maybe a little too much. I think the thing that Alex Ross does that's amazing is character designs. I think that's what I really love about Earth X, is that he did the character designs for that. I love Green Lantern from this. I love that. The armor he wears.
I think something that we've talked about in the past has been where you have a story and elements of that are ripped off so ubiquitously that you don't even realize, like, this is where all of that came from.
Right.
And I think Kingdom Come is one of those stories. Like, so much has been taken from it since
absolutely.
then
Yeah.
that you really need to read it just to recognize how influential it's been.
Yeah. And I think it's a great counterpoint to, I think, whereas Marvel's does this thing where it's like the observing of the birth of the Marvel history, and I think very well does a good job of encapsulating kind of the idea of the Marvel universe. This is DC's answer to that, but I also think it's an answer to things like Watchmen, where it's like, well, superheroes just don't work, and Mark Waid is very definitely saying, no, they do. You just need, sometimes they lose themselves, but they always find themselves again, and so it's got a really great.
It's a story of death and rebirth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of my favorite things to read. It's excellent.
It's absolutely a must-read for fans of the DC
Absolutely. And I think for fans of superhero comics.
Yeah. It's pretty meta in that it's talking about an old age of superheroes in direct combat against a new wave of superheroes.
Right. It's like this
You also have to recognize when it was written.
Yeah.
Like right smack dab in the middle of the 90s.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of explicit references to what's going on in the 90s
Yeah.
and where comics have gone recently, and kind of the old guard standing up to what's happening and saying, no, this isn't the way it has to
right?
be.
Yeah, and I think that the DC, because of this book, the DC universe was shaped in the modern age the way that it was.
Absolutely.
Where, it maybe didn't go as far as the Marvel universe, and it definitely did not go as far as the Image universe into the dark anti-hero realm that Magog and his crew represent in this book. So I think it's really cool that they were able to be like, no, look, we can still be traditional superhero. There's still a place for Superman.
There's still
in the
stories
world.
to be told.
Yeah, and I think this is a great kind of meta comic. So if you
absolutely.
if you're a fan of superheroes and you were reading comics in the 90s, this is great.
Well, and I like the parallel between the Sentry too, because I think that the two main, they both have this thread of belief in them. Mm-hmm. As the Sentry is fueled on his journey by the belief of his friends, the superheroes in Kingdom Come are fueled by their belief in themselves and what they stand for. Yeah. And it is Mark Waid very much saying, we don't need your dark and gritty and angsty bullshit. The heroes we have are just fine.
Well, let's not get too deep into it, just in case we pick it.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think it's nice because there's a lot of endings to the DC universe that have been told through Elseworlds, and this is a really strong one. So it's you don't have to choose the All-Star Superman end to Superman. You don't have to choose the Dark Knight Returns end to Superman Batman. There's the Kingdom Come possibility.
There's a bunch of them.
The whatever happened to the Man of Steel there's all these great possible endings to the DC universe, and I think this is a really strong one for sure.
Yeah.
What'd you bring, Matt?
I brought Hawkeye, My Life as a Weapon, Volume 1. It's a Matt Fraction book. The first 3 issues are done by David Aja. 4 and 5 are by Javier Pulido.
And this is the new Hawkeye, right?
This is the new Hawkeye. This trade just came out a couple months ago. This is before Marvel Now. This was probably my favorite book from Marvel. After Marvel Now, I'd say it's still top 5, and it's ongoing still. What really struck me about this is after the Avengers movie and everything, when they announced this title, it felt like, and I was afraid that they were just going to fall into just doing Hawkeye exactly the same as he was in the movie, and they didn't do that, and I was so happy. I mean, this is very street level stuff that he does. I believe it's the first 2 issues. He's dealing with like a slumlord, basically. I mean, and it's just great. I mean, the art's really good. If you've ever read Fraction and Aja's Immortal Iron Fist,
it's so good.
It feels a lot like that in the fact that they're taking this character that is kind of been a B-list character and fleshing him out, making you identify with him more.
Yeah.
Hey. Hawkeye led the West Coast Avengers. Are you
They had U.S. Agent and the Living Lightning.
Don't forget, this guy used to be Goliath, right?
he was Goliath.
He was Goliath.
Which is his best costume, in my opinion. So I think you should probably go back to that.
He
Not to take away from the new series,
He
but I'd
totally
love to see
dated
Goliath.
Mockingbird, didn't he?
No, they were married.
They were married,
just
but he
dated
is
everybody,
totally
right?
not like Green Arrow at all.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah, I think I actually would like Hawkeye a lot more if he had a boxing glove arrow.
And a goatee.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great story. It's very well written. It's kind of a different side of Hawkeye that other than the movies, obviously, which is very mainstream right now. So it was great. It's really well written, and the art's awesome. Also, Kate Bishop's in it. Which I actually really like Kate Bishop. She took over as Hawkeye for a little while.
She was in Young
Avengers, which is a great book.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just it's a good story, and if you haven't read Immortal Iron Fist, you should. If you have read it and you liked it, and you haven't read this,
read it again.
Yeah,
read it again. Yeah. It's that good.
But also read this.
Yeah, I also think that if you liked Bendis's run on Avengers and you liked Hawkeye in that, even though he was like Ronin for half of it and whatever, Bendis really sets...
Hey, spoilers!
It came out like 10 years ago. Anyway, he sets Hawkeye up as a very strong Marvel character in those books, and so if you identified with him in that, I think that this is a cool place to go. If you've only seen him in the movies, this is still a cool place to go. I think it's a well-handled book. I haven't read all 5 issues, but...
I've actually been planning to read it.
Yeah.
And I was going to borrow it from Matt tonight, regardless of whether we pick it or not.
Well, maybe I was going to borrow it.
They're releasing a oversized hardback trade too soon. That's actually what I'm going to wait for to buy because...
Cool. Way to destroy the comic book industry by waiting for the oversized hardcover.
Anyways.
Why didn't you buy the single issues and then the trade paperback and then the digital copies and then the oversized hardcover like you're supposed to?
I thought they gave you the digital copies when you bought the issues.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't.
I'm trying to talk here, man. God, come on.
I'm just going to talk over you. It's what you do.
Anyways, what I have to say is incredibly important at all times. What I was going to say is Fraction has the distinction of being a guy that I'm pretty much like, oh, he's writing it? That'll be good. Yeah. He's doing Fantastic Four right now with Mike Allred, right? And
well, he's doing FF with Mike Allred, and then he's doing Fantastic Four with somebody else whose name I forget, but I'm totally going to look up, and I'll get back to you in a second.
No. He also did the I don't want to say reboot, but reissuing of Invincible Iron Man.
Vaguely.
Right
after the Iron Man movie came out.
Yeah,
in 2008.
Yeah, when it was
right, he did.
Right after it was right after Civil War, they did the Iron Man or Tony Stark director of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever it was. It was after that he took over. and with that storyline, which was like the
The Five Nightmares. I
Nightmares.
just read that a few weeks ago.
Fantastic
Loved
too.
it.
Yeah,
He's great.
He's really good.
I think he's got a really good grasp of what makes comic characters compelling.
Also,
He
just
does
a nice
pithy
guy.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
By the way.
yeah, super nice.
Oh, is it? Yeah, he is. No, I've totally met him.
He goes to ECCC like every year. So.
EC cubed.
ECCC.
EC3?
EC cubed.
Cool.
But it's not cute, though.
It is.
It's just-
CCC.
Yeah, but you don't
Yeah,
multiply
with
them,
the
you add them.
3.
Yeah,
No
It's
no
EC3.
sign in between letters implies
Oh
multiplication.
my god, what have you guys done? Said
No,
more
I'm sorry.
math.
Emerald
Everybody
City.
who's taking
Emerald
fucking
City.
high
Oh,
school
sorry.
algebra
No,
knows that
let's
if
talk
it's
about
not-
math more. Let's do it.
Chard.
Go ahead. Let's
Chard.
talk about
Anyways,
math more. Let's
Chard.
talk more about math.
Chard.
Also, in my defense, they call E3, and there's 3 E's, the whatever entertainment
EC3.
expo.
So you want to call it E3C?
Yeah, that's fine. Does
Chard.
anyone have a problem with that? Can we
I
call it that?
don't care.
How about Emerald City? How about
That's
we just
fine.
call
Yeah,
it
just
Emerald
call it
City?
City
Emerald
Comic
City.
Con. Whatever.
Yo, fuck you guys, I'm
Cool.
leaving.
No,
If
get
I
out
can
of
get
here.
out of this chair.
Get out of here. I'm gonna do my pick now. So, in a weird, I didn't intend to pick this on the back of I Kill Giants, but I picked an all ages black and white book. Also, you can't have it. I'm using it as a prop for this show. That's a video show. I picked Crogan's Vengeance, which is a series. The Crogan's series is a series by Chris Schweitzer. I think that's how you would say that.
I think that's how you say it.
And he uses this really interesting framing device of this dad and these 2 kids, or a family that has 2 kids, and they're the Crogan family. And at the beginning of the book, there's a timeline of all these ancestors in the Crogan line, and there's like pirates and trailblazer, like fur trapper guys, and smugglers, and British infantrymen, and ninjas, and lion tamers. So and private eyes. There's like a huge amount of characters that he's introduced, like right in the inside jacket of the cover. And each story is a different member of Crogan's family. And the framing device is that the dad is teaching these kids a lesson about life somehow by telling them a story about their ancestors. So it's an adventure story set in the past that is probably not actually true about ancestors that these kids have.
Don't talk about
portrayed.
Dad that way.
Do any of these Crogan have a quad?
That's what I was going to ask. They all have quads.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they must all have quads.
Probably.
You've got a quad too for recommending it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for making Mass Effect reference. That was wrong with me.
No, it was beautiful. I was going to do it.
Yeah.
I beat you to it.
Shepherd.
Are we going to
Just do that for now.
Shepherd.
Shepherd.
Shepard? I'm sorry, but the
Shepherd.
scene when in like Mass Effect 2 when you go back to the Crogan homeworld and Rex is there and he's talking to that guy and he's just like, "Fuck you, it's my homie. What's up?" It's like that's
Yeah.
a badass moment.
Is it spelled the same as this? It's not.
No,
is it?
no,
Okay,
it's
cool.
K. It's KR.
Okay. Yeah, no, there's a there's a video on YouTube that I love that is just, I think it's the male shepherd, but it's just him saying Rex and then and Rex saying Shepherd, and it goes on for 10 hours. So like find that and just watch it. It makes me laugh every time. Shepherd, Rex, Shepherd. It's great.
Rex.
Anyway, Mass Effect tangent. This book is Crogan's Vengeance. It's the first one in the series. I believe there are 4 now, and each one is a different family member. And it's black and white. It's very cartoon-esque, and it's also hand-lettered, which almost never happens anymore, but is awesome. And the lettering is fantastic. Makes the book really dynamic and fun. Ooh. And it's a great book. I really love it. It's all ages. It's very funny. It's cool. There's a lot of action. There's adventure. This one's pirates, so there's swashbuckling and stormy nights and pirate raids, and it's a guy
I thought you were going to say pirate rape.
Pirate rape.
Not very all ages.
No, I don't think there's any pirate rape in the book. I don't remember. I would be surprised if there was. But no, there's pirate raids on like forts. And this is a character that did not intend to be a pirate. He was in I think the British Armada, and gets swept up on this pirate adventure. And it's really cool. And it's kind of about like using your head. I forget the lesson that they're trying to teach. Obviously, I didn't learn it. But there is a cool lesson that's kind of imparted. And it's not talking down to kids anyway, but it's a fantastic all ages book. I really enjoy it. I think I have the first 2. I've been meaning to pick up 3, and I think the 4th one's out now too. They're really fun. I love the hand lettering. I love the
hand
art.
lettering is cool.
The art's really cartoony, but in the best possible way for me. Like I personally am a fan of that style of art, so it may be off-putting to some people, but I really enjoy it. And it's black and white, and I love black and white books, so I think it's really fun. There's funny moments and action adventure, and I've said all this before. I'm just rambling while they hand the book around and look at it because I think the art's great and it's fun.
It looked really cool.
And the hardback is by Oni Press.
It's only $15.
Yeah, the hardback of it is really cool, and it's just like a nice presentation, nice package, and a fun story, and they're all pretty cool.
Cool.
So that's my pick for this week. Joe, what would you like to read? It says ages 13 plus, but I think you could probably give it to a 10-year-old, even maybe an 8-year-old. That is a good reader.
I think I'm going to
or likes
vote
pirate rape.
for...
Or likes pirate rape.
See, Matt has Happy over there, and that's what I was really hoping you would recommend, because that's really what I want to read. I think I'm just going to gank that from him.
Yeah.
And I'm going to vote for Hawkeye.
Wow, Matt with the Joe double picks Matt on that one. That's gotta feel good.
Because I've wanted to read Hawkeye for a while, and I think it'll... I don't think... I know it'll be good.
Cool.
I really want to read that one too, but
Yeah.
I
Let's hand
feel
it to you.
let's do it.
pass
It's like I
books
said,
around the table.
I kind of want to read some. I'd like to read a superhero book where I don't have to worry about turning the page and watching one of my favorite characters get their fucking face wiped off by a punch. So, I think Hawkeye.
Cool.
I think I'm pretty safe. I don't
Yeah, it's
know,
definitely
like-
good. It's definitely a good palate cleanser.
Obviously, you
coming
have
off.
enough comics with Madcap in it.
Coming off Invincible. This
And
is a
if
good
you
comic.
remember Madcap, 10 points for you.
I
don't.
don't either.
Is that an Image character?
No, that's a Marvel character.
Okay, cool. Don't remember.
Wait a minute. Was he the
Fucking look
cartoon
him up.
character?
Yeah.
He was like the living cartoon character.
Yeah.
I totally remember him. 10 fucking points for me.
Yay.
It was
Relevant
amazing.
points.
It was the creepy. It was awesome.
Yeah, I
Who
don't know what
wouldn't
else he
want that?
showed up in, but I remember him from Power Pack.
Who wouldn't want that skill set?
What?
I fucking love Power Pack.
Your
Shut
superpower is that
awesome.
you're pretty much Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
You can get shot, stabbed, thrown off of cliffs, safes dropped on you, and you're like, no, I feel a little woozy. Oh, there's a character, the mask.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm also going to vote for Hawkeye, because the first thing I recommended on this podcast was The Immortal Iron Fist, and we didn't pick it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a redemption.
I think we didn't pick it because we'd all read it.
Yeah,
It was like,
probably.
unfortunately, we were all like, yeah, it's really good. Pick something else.
So yes, I'm also voting for Hawkeye.
All right. Cade, what do you want to read?
I originally wanted to read Lock and Key, but after how hard this I Kill Giants hit me and how little I talked, I don't think I could talk about that one very much. So I also want to see Hawkeye.
Sweet. Not only is my vote irrelevant this week, yours is too, Matt. What would you like to read?
I was gonna pick Kingdom Come just because
Yeah.
we've read Marvels, we read Earth X. Kingdom. I'm a DC guy, so
Yeah.
I just want to talk about some Kingdom Come.
Yeah, I think we'll probably end up talking. We've talked about it a lot on the show, but
I
I
think-
would not be surprised if we do an episode about it.
I had Kingdom Come on my list, and I wasn't going to recommend it now because we just read Earth X
Yeah.
and Marvels.
Yeah.
But I think it's one that we'll definitely get to eventually.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
not be
absolutely.
surprised at all.
I mainly wanted it to go up on the recommendations on the website.
Yeah.
Because that page, it's... Lately, if I want a new book, I just look at that page. If I haven't read it, I know it's probably good.
You know,
Yeah.
it's half the reason I do the show is because I want recommendations on books as bad as everybody else.
Yeah, if you haven't gone to our website, viewfromthegutters.com, recently, I've been putting up a reading list of just every single book that's been recommended, whether we picked it or not. And there's a lot of fucking entries there at this point.
I love that we do
Read The Last Unicorn, by the way. That's,
I actually still,
It's-
no joke, am meaning to read that because the art in that book is beautiful. I'm not gonna lie.
that's a throwback to what our second episode.
That was our second episode. The first episode we picked books.
Yeah.
Bernie forgot to pick a book
Then he
and
picked
just
the last
grabbed the last unicorn off the shelf because it was new.
And we literally were making fun of him, then started passing the book around. We're like, wait, this actually looks like it's really good.
I kinda wanna read it.
And I have read about half of it, and the story is mediocre at best, but the art is amazing, actually.
It was a movie from my childhood that I don't remember, so I'm meaning to
Oh,
read it.
thank God for that.
So,
Yeah.
Chard, just for the record, what are you voting for?
I'm gonna vote for Box Office Poison. I've already read it before, but
Oh, God damn
Joe
it.
and I are now holding hands.
Lock and Key coming up with a
But-
big fat zero.
Well, again, I think we've all read it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, eventually.
that always happens on the show where I'll bring a book. I'm like, yeah, people will want to read that, and then everybody's already read it, and I'm like,
It's really freaking good.
no, I love Locke and Key.
I
I think I
wanna read it.
recommended it to Matt.
Yeah, Andrew was the one that recommended Lock and Key to me.
Yeah.
It was when I started working at the same comic book store that he was working at. It was
Yeah.
actually I think it was the first thing that he recommended to me.
I was giving that book to everybody that walked in the door at some point. It was my number one go-to book for a long time. I think it's fantastic. I can't recommend that book highly enough.
And
So.
before we get too far away from it, while we're on the topic of the website, if you've been listening to the podcast, if you like it, tell your friends about it. Rate us on iTunes.
Even if you don't, if
like
you-
our Facebook page.
Yeah.
Do something. Get the word out.
Yeah.
guys.
If
We're
you-
all on Twitter, aren't I'm on
Well,
Twitter.
we have a Twitter account. Joe
Yeah.
and I are both on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a
individually.
tweeter eventually.
I'm Joe Amazo on Twitter. You can find me there. I post funny things.
Yeah, we'll put up like host bios or something with
Yeah.
links if we've got Twitter accounts or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're
But
on all that
also,
stuff.
if
Spread the
you-
word about the podcast.
Yeah, if you hate us, tell your enemies about the show.
Yeah.
And just inflict pain on
And
them
we
by
have
making
an
them listen
email
to
address, don't we? If you want to see...
yeah, if you want to make a comment about anything we've said, if you hate us, if you love us, contact at viewfromthegutters.com.
And if you want us to read something or talk about something, or if there's something
Yeah.
you're like, why the fuck are these assholes not talking about this, that, or the other thing, let us know.
Yeah, send us an email.
Seriously.
Have we got an email yet?
Do you want
No.
us to
I
not
want
ever
some
talk
mail.
about...
We've got no emails.
Let's get
'cause
some.
something else also, for our homestucks out there, Hussey has officially said that he is taking a hiatus to begin the final push of the series.
Also,
So,
I'm coining the term stuccos
stuccos?
because you use that to build a house.
Yes, it's
right?
true.
So
Yes,
it's
true.
it works
That's
on
good.
multiple
Stuccos,
levels.
it does.
So there you go. I'm just gonna throw that out
Stuccos.
there, trying to get that one to stick. Boom, pun. That was a pun. I hate those. Anyway,
Anyway. So yeah, read
and
Hawkeye.
Also,
Yes.
iTunes. Rate us on iTunes because
Yes.
that's where we're
Yes,
at.
please do. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So Hawkeye. Next episode. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.